Welcome back, Mr. Goodberry. The First Star Logistics studio is fully equipped and ready to record.
Week 1 is here. Jamar Chase is still holding out as of Monday when I record this. The Bengals have announced some starters at 2 key position battles throughout the year. Some new guys are practicing. And the biggest news of the week is McKinley Jackson changed his number from 68 to 93 and maybe potentially saving the trajectory of his career, as 93 is a much better number. That number vacated by Jeffrey Gunter with his retirement. So that's good for McKinley Jackson, who's on IR, so we won't see him for 4 games, but that number 93 will look much better for the Bengals. In other news, the right tackle and cornerback 2 job have been awarded to Trent Brown, the veteran the Bengals signed, who I think we expected him to be the starting right tackle, but when Amarius Mims played so well, or appeared to play so well, it's hard to tell, right? We really had one drive and a couple plays in preseason for Mims. But all reports out of camp were that he was performing as expected as a first-round pick with all the potential in the world, while Trent Brown was inactive and not ready to participate until pretty much the end of camp and then beginning of preseason. And ultimately, he is the veteran and he gets the nod, as Amarius Mims is able to practice again on light duty, or at least he's in uniform. When the team went to go blocking and do the physical portion of practice, he wasn't involved in that. So he's still working his way back. I expect he'll be ready in short order. But as of week 1, Trent Brown is your starter at right tackle. And at cornerback number 2, DJ Turner versus Dax Hill, the converted safety, versus maybe Josh Newton got in there a little bit. There were some people that asked that question and talked about that. Dax Hill has been named the starter at cornerback. So how about that? Think about the turnaround there. Think about the recent first round picks that aren't starting for the Bengals over the last 4 years. It's really just Dax Hill, and it's from free safety last season to outside boundary corner, not nickel corner, not slot corner like he played at Michigan. Boundary corner. Be interesting to watch him all season long. Zach Taylor did say that DJ Turner will play, and I've broken that down and talked about that too. It looks like Turner does have a role, not just as a backup and not just on special teams, but as a potential slot 3rd and 5 plus situation. There's been a lot of plays and a lot of packages in camp and in preseason where we see Mike Hilton is removed from the defense and DJ Turner is inserted, which gives you Cam Taylor-Britt, Dax Hill, DJ Turner. And I think they're all going to play. I think you're 4 deep there, 5 deep with the way Josh Newton played, and you're really good at corner. And then Jalen Davis is on the practice squad and can be called up at any point. It's a really good cornerback room. So good on Dax Hill to win that job and be one of the few first-round picks that are starting for the Bengals recently. And I think they're going to need that for this defense to – I think they should rebound from where they were last year. I think when they end up 31st in yards and 32nd in explosive plays, they should rebound in both of those numbers, just in the communication on the back half. But I also think they're a little bit better at corner, a little deeper at corner. And these young guys, the DJ Turners, the Dax Hills, the Jordan Battles, the McKinley Jacksons, and Chris Jenkins, and Joseph Osai, Miles Murphy when he returns, McKinley Jackson when he returns, a lot of young players. Cam Taylor-Britt, right? I think there's still another step in his game. And if he gets it, and if he hits it, it's going to go a long way to making this defense rebound and get to where they need to be. Bengals also announced their captains on Monday. On offense, Joe Burrow, Orlando Brown, and Ted Karras. Those are your most veteran players that have been with the team now. I mean, Karras is going into year 3, but Burrow, the quarterback, usually gets that. Ted Karras has been in the league a long time. One of the oldest players on the roster, he and Trent Brown, but it's Orlando Brown getting it at left tackle. As soon as he got here, he's been a face and a spokesman for the team. I think Ted Karras would be considered the same way. Players vote on this. I think players and coaches vote on this. On the defensive side, it's Vaughn Bell at safety, Jermaine Pratt at linebacker, and Sam Hubbard at left defensive end. Hubbard's been a captain for a long time. Vaughn Bell missing a year and coming back into captaincy. Good to see that. And pretty much sets the tone and answers why he was brought back. Not that we have any questions why, but and he's a captain right away. I think that speaks volumes. And on special teams, Evan McPherson, the newly extended kicker. I don't even know if we even talked about that. We may have just had a brief moment of saying, yeah, Evan McPherson is extended, and we kept moving because it's not very inexpensive extension when it happens. But yeah, he'll be here for a long time, and he's a captain. And the other one is Akeem Davis Gaither, who got his 1-year extension with the Bengals this offseason and is a good special teams player. They lost Marcus Bailey. Remember, he was, I thought, one of their best special teams players the last couple of years, and I believe he went to Arizona. I don't know if he made the team, though. If you know, let me know. Put it in the comments because I will forget to check that out. I don't think we play the Cardinals at all this year. So I probably won't look at that roster or see that. Although I do know they play the Bills week 1, so maybe I will end up catching some of that game. See how Jonah Williams does at right tackle compared to Trent Brown. But big news still is the Jamar Chase holdout hold-in is continuing. Although reports, rumors, insiders have said progress has been made, and it feels like it's going to get done. If you had to ask me, and somebody did on Twitter recently, what percentage would I put it at feeling like it's getting done and that he's going to be out there week 1? I said 85%. 85% is that it's done and he's out there. I feel like it's like 75% that it gets done. So very close between the two. I think the deal gets done at this point, but we have to be aware that, hey, the season, we've only got a few practices left. We're missing our first one already on Monday. And he's got to get in shape. Taylor keeps saying he's in shape. He works out. He's doing everything he needs to do on the side, but it's different. You got to run routes. You got to be out there. You got to do your thing with Joe Burrow, even though your chemistry and Burrow and Chase's chemistry has been great forever. And so that should rekindle pretty quickly. But at this point, it sounds like the Bengals are going to make him the highest paid receiver in the league, and they're just going to get it done, which is how I feel and hope it goes anyway. For the rest of the show, though, I put a few hours in this, and I do this every year. And when I say a few hours, it's definitely more than 3. The few variety of nearing on 20 hours of research probably, and compiling and triple checking my numbers. I've got projections for the season. I want to go over their schedule, and I want to go over individual players. So it's not just win-loss projection. That'll be the quick part of this next segment. But it's how many yards I think Burrow's going to throw for, how many touchdowns, how many times he'll be sacked, how many catches for Jamar Chase and T. Higgins and Jermaine Burton and Mike Gesicki, and who's going to lead the running back room in touches and yards and total yards and touchdowns and sacks and interceptions on the defensive side. I've done all of that and bounced it around and looked at numbers for entire careers of these players, projections built on historical data and what I think they'll do and the role I think they'll play. I went over what I thought the depth chart would look like last week. If you didn't see that, go back and watch that. And that's going to influence how much I think these guys are going to play and why I split the snaps and the production the way I did. So let's dive into that. I think that's the most fun. Here's my preview. Here's how I think the season's going to go. We've got the graphic here that the Bengals put up, and we're going to go through that. And now that we know who's starting which weeks, more than likely, right? We know Jacoby Brissett starting for the Patriots week 1. And now that I think about it, I did not say this is Bengals on the Brain, episode 115, presented by First Star Logistics. Let's dive into the season and see what we've got. Is everyone with me? Is this an easy win? Oh, I never like to say an easy win. The Bengals are favored more than any other team, any other week 1 matchup. When's the last time that happened? Open in orange. I really like the odds that the Bengals come out on top with or without Jamar Chase. Although they haven't started very hot in previous years under Zach Taylor. We'll see how much of that was previous Joe Burrow injuries and not being able to have a full, strong training camp. They played a little bit in preseason. Can we use that excuse? I don't know. Well, hey, let's be realistic and let's say they start off 1-1. And I know we all dislike that. I think we'll get our revenge on the Chiefs later as we start the season 3-1. And now I think the slow start thing can be put to rest. It's not so bad. We're not worried about it. You start off 3-1. All is good. I'm going to have them losing to Baltimore, though, because everything's not perfect to start the year before they run off a few wins in a row. Baltimore, and then Sunday Night Football, Giants, week 6. Yes, that's week 6. Week 7, handle the Browns. How about that? It's not all bad. Week 9, back at home, 4:25 game. The Bengals are rolling. At this point, I think the games I typically give them losses to, and you guys have seen this before. I'm basically, when I look at this, is how does the defense make the other team's quarterback play, and how does their defense make your quarterback play? I think it's hard to stop Mahomes. I think it's hard to stop Lamar Jackson. So I see those as being coin flip type games. These other ones, I think they have the advantage. Although the Eagles are stacked and Jalen Hurts can have a game, so anything can happen there. The Bengals are on a roll now. And I'm going to say they have this little slip up here with the Chargers. One of the few games where, yeah, they probably could win those. But I think the Chargers actually will be okay. They'll play tough defense. Harbaugh will have that run game going. Harbaugh and Roman will have that run game going. And largely at this point, you get to the bye week and you have now only lost 3 games. You're 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Would you go 8-3? Would you take 8-3 to start the season? I would. How about 9-3? That's where we're at right here. I'm going Dallas Cowboys loss, despite I think that could be a coin flip game. But whenever you're away against a good team, anything can happen there. I've got the Bengals splitting with the Browns. Can we see that? Is that clear enough? There we go. L there. So I got them splitting with the Browns. I've got them beating Denver. And I've got them sweeping the Steelers. Splitting with the Browns, splitting with the Ravens, sweeping the Pittsburgh Steelers. 12 wins, 5 losses, splitting with the Browns, Ravens. Then you got Chiefs and Cowboys slipping in there. 12-5, I think, is battling for that first seed, the teams you have to worry about. Can the Chiefs falter and go 11 wins? Because that week 2 game could be huge in terms of that number 1 seed. We want that number 1 seed, right? Let's get that W there. And then you go 13 wins. That's how you get that number 1 seed. Could come down to that game. Could come down to a game later where you just beat the Browns here or beat the Cowboys there. But I think I'll take 12 wins anytime. You're not going to win every game you're supposed to. You're not going to lose every game you're supposed to. Some games are coin flips, and I think the Bengals will be in good shape. How do they get there? How do they get 12 wins? Let's check out the stats right here. Starting at the top of this screen here, trying not to look too far down. We'll get to it. Maybe I'll put my picture right in front of it. There we go. Starting with the top at quarterback, passing first, Joe Burrow with 606 attempts. Remember, he was on pace to drop back more than any other quarterback in the league last year, pretty much 2 years in a row, because remember in 2022, they only played 16 games. But on a per game basis, Joe Burrow throws more than anyone. Will that continue with the risks, with trying to keep him healthy, with making sure you have a more efficient running game and more of a running game and an offense built around Burrow that can protect him just a bit? I think the numbers come down slightly, but still over 600 attempts, 606 total. And that's with Jake Browning throwing 40. Maybe that's with Burrow missing a game. Maybe that's with Browning finishing off some blowouts or playing the final week in the season because the Bengals have the first seed wrapped up. Either way, we've got Browning in there. I've got Burrow with a 69.8% completion for the season. That would be huge for him. That would be, not only is he accurate, but he's throwing at 7.4 yards per attempt. Sorry for the fumble there myself. 4,484 yards, 35 touchdowns through the air, 12 interceptions. This culminates in let's clear that. That's from previous. 102.1 passer rating, should be near or close to or in the top 5 in the league. So great season for Joe Burrow. This is verging on an MVP type season, depending on how the other players do. Now, how do we divvy that up? So we got 37 total touchdowns through the air, 47 total yards, 4,700 total yards, 449 completions, and 646 total attempts. So let's slide this down just slightly. I want to see the total there still. Okay. And if you can see the total down here, I'll move that, move my picture to the side, and you can see the total. Instead of 646 attempts, we have 635. Why? Because we've got some spikes, throwaways. Typically, you're in the 15 to 20 range on that. I've only got 11, so I'm a little bit low. You could probably take a few targets away from these guys. I got Jamar Chase leading it, despite the uncertainty for week one. Even though I'm confident or feeling good, I'm hopeful that Jamar Chase is out there and we have a contract extension. I still have him close to last year's numbers, 102 catches, just over last year's 100, 1,263 yards, 11 touchdowns. And I put drops in there too because drops are normal and we shouldn't freak out over them too much. T. Higgins with 106 targets, 73 catches for 1,040 yards, 7 touchdowns. Seen some people calculate a little bit more for Higgins, but I've got him a little bit lower because he tends to miss time every season, and I try to factor that in. These aren't just straight 17 game projections. I project that guys probably are going to miss time because they do, right? If you average missing 3 games a year, well, I'm going to assume you're going to miss 3 more games this year. Not to try predict injuries. I don't do that. I'm just saying, based on career averages, a year like this from T. Higgins would make a lot of sense for him. Andre Yosivas, third most targets of anybody on the team. I'm going to highlight him so you guys know what we're talking about. 31 catches, 317 yards, just over 10 yards per catch, 3 touchdowns, 4 drops. I have him getting the most targets and most play from that inside spot, but I also think he's going to move around and play outside as well. Versatile piece, but you'll see why I have him a little bit lower. I think Jermaine Burton, who I have next, and I have him next, is based on yards over here if you want to see, but Burton, I have Trent Irwin getting more targets than Burton. But I've got Burton getting 37 total targets, catching 22 balls this year, just more than 1 per game, 298 yards, which is a good clip, over 14 yards per catch, 3 touchdowns, which is great on 22 catches, and just 1 drop. He's got great hands. Trenton Irwin, 42 targets, more targets than Burton, 28 grabs, more grabs than Burton as well, 287 yards, which is about 10 yards per catch for him, 2 touchdowns, 2 drops. Charlie Jones getting in action as a guy we know is going to be active every week because he's a return man. 28 targets, 18 catches, 184 yards, just over 10 yards per catch, 1 touchdown, 1 drop. But I think I would take this, right? We got a combination of these 3 basically replacing Tyler Boyd, and it's just in the 900-yard range and 8 touchdowns. I think we would all take that. I definitely would. If we said Tyler Boyd put up 81 catches for 900 yards and 8 touchdowns, I think we'd all be like, okay, great, let's roll. And I think that the trio here is doing that very well with Charlie Jones bringing up the last spot. But how's that mix with tight end and running back? Mike Gesicki, 67 targets leading the way. I think he's going to be a huge part of who that slot receiver is and how you fill that Tyler Boyd role for the Bengals. 47 grabs, 463 yards, and 5 scores. That's a good red zone target. I don't think it's anything like Tyler Eifert. Someone said, can Eifert? I think it was Bengals captain put it up on Twitter. Could Gesicki hit those catches and those yards and those touchdowns? And I don't think he will, but if he does, because these are all safe projections, right? I could go crazy and say Burrow throws for 5,200 yards and wins MVP. But, I don't feel like the need that I have to go out on a limb here. I think it's within the realm of possibility. I'm trying to hit in the middle here. Mike Gesicki, if he gets 15 touchdowns like Tyler Eifert, if he has 780 yards, if he catches 60 balls, Joe Burrow's probably MVP. He probably threw for 5,000 yards. And these guys are all having career numbers because of it. Next guy up for targets is Tanner Hudson with 20, catching 16 for 145 and a touchdown. But Drew Sample's going to play the next most at tight end. Not much of a receiver, we know this. But he will catch a high rate for a low number of yardage, being kind of a third down back at times and being a check down option. He's not a guy you're going to stretch downfield with. So low numbers for him. Although as the whole group, I do like what I've got here for the whole unit at tight end and catching a lot of passes and doing a lot of work that maybe has been missing, matching numbers from last year and the previous year. Eric All, the prized rookie. I don't have Tanner McLaughlin in here. That was the one guy I didn't know even, how often is that all 5 guys going to be active? Maybe I could have cut Tanner Hudson's in half or Eric All's in half. I started doing this before McLaughlin for sure made the roster. I'm not sure he's active And until then, I didn't have him in this grouping. It'd probably take an injury, so the numbers would come from one of these guys anyways. But for Eric All, 11 catches, 92 yards, no touchdown, 1 drop. Because I expect him to play a big role, but will that lead to catches? I think most of his job will be blocking and providing some contrast to Drew Sample. I think the trio, the 12 personnel in the running packages are going to be Sample and All. And in that, maybe he'll get a few deep shots off some play action or something like that. But largely, he's in there for blocking, in my opinion, for as a rookie year. Very common. I posted the stats also. Bengals rookie tight ends. I think there's only been 9 in their history to ever catch more than 10 balls in a season. It doesn't happen very often. So for him to get 11, it's a solid rookie year. I see it in between like a Ryan Hewitt and a Tyler Kroft type rookie impact, which I think we'd all take that for a 5th round pick. Zach Moss. He is under Chase Brown here, but I went by running back 1 versus RB2. I didn't go by yards in this. I probably should have sorted it. Probably could have dragged Chase Brown up there. Zach Moss, 41 targets, 33 catches. That would be a good year for him receiving. He's never had a lot of receiving production. 223 yards here versus Chase Brown, who I think is just going to catch more balls, have more screens called for him. 45 for 322 is a solid average with 2 touchdowns. I think we'll take that from Chase Brown on 52 targets. I've got them really going to the running backs more. That's over 100 targets right there just to running backs. I do see more. A little bit more uptick at tight end because Gesicki's going to play the slot, and a little bit more uptick at running back because now they can pass protect and they're a little bit more dynamic with the ball in their hands. So in all, the numbers are going to match up. If you're wondering, if you ever do this, the yards got to match up to the yards the quarterback's throwing to. The touchdowns got to match up to the touchdowns. The catches got to match up to the completions. It's not magic. It's just math. All right. Down to the running game. I want to make sure I get this in the middle here. There we go. There we are. Zach Moss, 156 carries. Chase Brown, 139. I project a 50-50 split or close to it. But I've got very close in the yardage as well. But Chase Brown's going to have a higher yards per attempt. A little bit more touchdowns for Zach Moss, 6-4. And only 1 fumble for Moss, 2 for Chase Brown. Trevion Williams just barely getting in here with a 3.7 average, 18 carries, maybe 1 a game for 67 yards. He'll play a little bit. Maybe if someone goes down and he has to take a secondary role in one of these games. That's how I see it. For now, it's a solid running game. I think we take our 1,300 yards, total of 1,500 yards when you factor in the quarterbacks and everything, which is about where the Bengals typically end up. 12 touchdowns total. 10 fumbles total because, Joe Burrow quarterbacks usually are in the 5 range. That could go higher. Let's see how the risk does, right? Let's see if that's a factor in fumbling. We haven't seen him really get hit. 5 is average, though. That's what he would normally be in. I think he only had 2 fumbles last year for most of the year, but he also didn't get hit very much early until he couldn't move. 32 sacks, by the way, 34 total for the offense. For a team that's going to throw the ball, this would be how many dropbacks? That would be 34 plus the 646. So we're looking at nearly 700 dropbacks total and 32 sacks. I think we would take that overall. Couple carries for Jamar Chase and Charlie Jones. On to the defense. And again, leave the comments in there. Tell me where I'm wrong. Tell me where you're oh no, Chase Brown's going for 1,000 yards this year. I think total here, I've got Chase for 640 basically and 320. I think we would take 960 yards, right? 960 yards and 6 touchdowns. That's a breakout year for Chase Brown, in my opinion. People have known I've been high on him. So what do I think is a breakout? I think it's something like that. Total yardage here. Okay, first let's start with the defensive end group. And I've got snaps in here because it's a good way to balance it. I looked at what they have in previous years. It's normally around 12,000 snaps. They usually get about 750-ish tackles, 740 to 750, 300 pressures total, 40 to 55 sacks, and 10 to 25 interceptions would be normal for a defense. So those are the totals that I came up with. That's a way for me to double check on what we're doing here. And defensive end snaps, they normally end up in like the 22 to 2,300 range. So I had to count up and split it up between these guys. And because Myles Murphy's hurt, he's only ending up with 315. I originally had him at like 440, or maybe it was 450, getting close to that 500 range. And I was a little bit lower on Hubbard and Hendrickson, thought it'd be more of a rotation. And then Murphy goes down. It's like, okay, Cam Sample goes down. It's like, all right, these top two guys are in line for big usage again. I've got 14 and a half sacks for Trey Hendrickson on 62 pressures, 6 sacks for Sam Hubbard on 38 pressures. Miles Murphy gets back in the swing of things, 4 sacks, which I think is fine for a guy who's still backing up Hubbard. Probably a better pass rusher than Hubbard, so maybe that split will change. Maybe it's a breakout year for Murphy, and I'm way under here. And most of these sacks that Hubbard gets, maybe he's down to 3, and we can add 3 to Murphy's number, and he ends up with 7, which I think we'd all take. But I think the guy that's, again, I'm buying the breakout. I'm buying Joseph Osai, one of the youngest players still on the team in year 4, and continues to look good in camp and preseason. And now they have to lean on him, and they have to play him, and actually have to play him at defensive end. I think we're on the verge of a breakout year, and I've said this before, so I hate to even say it again, but I think that's what we're looking at for Joseph Osai. If he's going to be tied for 3rd in sacks, if you're already looking down too far, BJ Hill and Sheldon Rankins, I didn't mean for all 3 of them to end up with 5.5, but there we are. Mop up and sparingly play for KJ Henry while you're going to play early, probably. Cedric Johnson, just maybe gets a sack some point this year. BJ Hill leading the way in snaps. Sheldon Rankins typically hasn't played as many snaps as BJ Hill has, so I got him at 625. Rankins has dealt with injuries much more often than Hill has in his career, but he's the better pass rusher, accumulating more sacks and less snaps, or more pressures and less snaps. Same amount of sacks and 100 less snaps. So I still have Zach Carter as a 3rd most used defensive tackle, but I hope that starts to shift towards Chris Jenkins as the season goes. Jay Tufele getting early nose tackle snaps, and then it leading into McKinley Jackson. Is it 2 ends for McKinley? I think it is. But I have Chris Jenkins getting 1.5 sacks on the year, 16 tackles. We'll see how it goes from there. I do think this defensive tackle room is going to need somebody to step up. Whether Sheldon Rankins has a career year, BJ Hill has a career year, they're going to need that, or one of these rookies, or maybe Zach Carter finally takes a step. I'm not holding my breath on that one. At linebacker, mostly usage for the top 2 guys again. I didn't put the John Meta and Bocce's in there because if they play, these guys went down, right? And I'm not projecting or predicting injuries for the top 2 linebackers. There'll be a 3 linebacker package. They will play. Akeem Davis-Gaither will play some. 82 tackles, 67 tackles, 31. And this is just solo tackles. So like if you want to do combined tackles, it gets even crazier. And the number it's an unofficial stat. So it can get really overinflated. 1 sack, 2 sacks, half a sack, 3 interceptions for Logan Wilson. I did have an interception for Trey Hendrickson too, dropping back on a fire zone. He's going to get 1 this year. 3 for Logan Wilson, 1 for Jermaine Pratt. Cam Taylor-Britt leading the way for snaps at corner as cornerback number 1 with 4 interceptions. And then I have Mike Hilton having the 2nd most snaps because I still think we're going to get a bit of a rotation here between Dax Hill, DJ Turner, even though Dax Hill won that job. I've got him with the 2nd most picks of the corner room with 2. I also got him getting some pressures here. Mike Hilton with 7 pressures and a sack as well. I think Dax was a good blitzer last year. I do have Josh Newton getting in there a little bit. Typically, the backup boundary guys do play a ton for the Bengals. You could almost count the 4th corner as a starter these days. Guys like Eli Apple, they have to play, and it might be a DJ Turner, Josh Newton combo. We'll see how that shakes out. I don't want any injuries to happen, but I think Jalen Davis probably gets called up for a game or 2 as the season goes. I still think he's too good to be on the practice squad and worth a spot. Now, down to safety. Geno Stone leading the way. Von Bell with 835 after that. These are just snaps again. 4 interceptions for Geno Stone, 2 for Von Bell, 1 for Jordan Battle. I'm not sure Anthony and Anderson get in much on the defensive side. I got Dijon with at least a little role in there, maybe the Trey Flowers type role. Most of their contribution will be special teams, especially Tyson Anderson. I got a sack here for Von Bell. Let's say it's a blitz somewhere along the lines, but I think that's what we're looking at. I think it's a top 16, maybe a top 18 defense. Maybe they're ranked between 14 and 18. Maybe they're middle of the pack type defense, where I think the offense is going to regain some explosiveness, regain some efficiency. Explosiveness, a lot of it coming from the screens and the run game. And then, maybe that deep ball comes back. Chase and Higgins. And this is like a safe bet. If we seen 1,400 out of Chase and 1,200 out of Higgins, I wouldn't be surprised. But that would be less numbers for all these other guys. Or maybe Burrow just MVPs it and goes for 5,200 yards and 40 touchdowns. If he throws it and drops back as often as he did the last 2 years and stays healthy for this, you could add 50 attempts to this chart, and then you're adding, maybe you can get up to 175 targets for Jamar Chase, 120 catches and 1,400 yards. That's how it happens. I could see it, and I would like to see it. These are my projections for the season. Let me know where I'm off. I'm sure people are going to have opinions on that, and that's okay. So that's our episode of Bengals on the Brain presented by First Star Logistics. Hopefully by the time you're watching this, Jamar Chase has signed his deal. And by the time the next episode comes, we will have our kickoff to the NFL season, 2024 season, Ravens at Chiefs. Just root for football, right? I don't know. Good game, maybe. Bad game? Would that be better? No, we don't need 10 days, Chiefs. I didn't say that when I went over the schedule. Chiefs get 10 days to prepare for the Bengals. But they're usually not as good early in the season. We struggle with the same thing they do, if you look at it. We'll see. Not looking ahead. Got the Patriots week 1, all orange. We got one more episode for Friday coming up where I'm going to tell you how the slate is going to change a little bit for Bengals on the Brain and how often you see me on the First Star Media channel, because we have a show to talk about. It's going to take place on game day. So if you're ready for your first reaction, you'll want to be on First Star YouTube media page, and we've got you covered, but I'm not going to spill the beans just yet. Till next time, Uday.
Dave Lapham here, and every day I am grateful for my experience to have played professional football. As a player, I realize self-motivation, leadership, and appreciating your teammates are key. At First Star Logistics, you can use those same attributes to create the life you want for you and your family. Build your future by working hard like I did. You'll see results both on and off the field. Call First Star Logistics today and be part of our winning team.
Opportunity knocking.